So I'm back on my Mac and I have executed the exact same script that we have executed together on Windows. And this is what I got back. Now, essentially, if you have paid attention to what we have been discussing so far, you can probably tell that this test did not put a lot of load. So we only have one virtual user, and that virtual user has only sent two requests, essentially a duration of less than 1 second. So this is what has happened with this execution so far. Now, by default, if we don't specify anything, K6 has a duration of about 1 second and will only use one virtual user. This is kind of useful if you want to check if our script is working properly, but not so useful for performance tests. So how can we specify more virtual users and how can we extend the length of our test? So in order to do that, we're going to go back to the script, and inside the script, what we will do is to define a constant called options. So this will be an object that will store a few things. And super important, apart from defining this as a constant, we also need to export it. So I'm going to put this export keyword in front of it so that K6 knows about these additional options that we want to give here. So what we're going to give here is, first of all, VUs. So we can specify how many virtual users we want to use. So I'm going to specify 10 virtual users and then separate it with a comma. I'm going to also specify a test duration. And in this case, the duration will be 10 seconds. So I'm going to write here 10s. And in your code, whenever you see here something wrong, it means that what you have written here is not correct. So in this case, 10 seconds is a string, so we need to put this between quotes. So now we'll see it looks much better. Of course, we can put here any value like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and so on. Let's try, for example, 60 seconds to show you a neat trick. So what I'm going to do here is going to use Ctrl-L to clear the screen. And with the up key, I'm going to bring back the last command I have executed. I'm going to start this. So you'll see now the tests are running. We have here 10 virtual users. And it is running and running. Now, sometimes when we're starting one of these tests, we can make a mistake. For example, maybe we have put there a very, very long duration, or maybe we have used really a lot of users. So if we want to stop this, all we have to do is press Ctrl-C. So this will work regardless if you use Mac, Windows, or Linux. It will simply abort the test, right? So this will send essentially a signal to K6, and we're telling, hey, stop as it is right now. So it will see this hasn't executed here for 60 seconds. Okay, that's good to know. So let's go ahead and clear the screen and essentially run this for 10 seconds. See how it looks like if we do that. So we'll see here the test is running. Notice here the seconds. So in just a bit, this execution is done. So we're going to get the final report, and it's going to tell us exactly what has happened here. Now, there's one thing I want you to notice, and this is here iteration. So we used 10 users for a duration of 10 seconds. And in this case, what we did is we did 139 iterations. It means that this function here, which calls this address, has been executed 139 times. And apart from this, we also have here HTTP requests. And I want you to notice here that we have executed 278 requests. This is a bit weird, right? How is it possible that we have 139 iterations? So we have called these functions 139 times, but you have 278 requests. Well, this is a bit of a thing. When we are noticing right from the beginning that there is a difference between these numbers, it typically means that there is a redirect or something is happening in the background where the server is telling us, oh, you want this address. Actually, the results are somewhere else. So if you see something like this in your results, this is the case. Now, in my situation here, I've used HTTP. So what I should have done is use HTTPS. So let's go ahead and run this again with HTTPS, because we then we are skipping one of these redirects that are happening there. So we are calling this address and we are not going anywhere else. So in this case, what I want you to notice is the number of iterations is the same with the number of requests. And in this case, when we are calling a single address, this is what we want to see. This number should be the same. But still, what is a bit still confusing here is why aren't there 10 requests that are being sent out? Well, the thing is, when we are specifying 10 virtual users in a duration of 10 seconds, what is happening is that K6 will take these virtual users and will get them through this function as many times as possible. So for example, even if there is a single virtual user, it will take the virtual user, it will have it open this address, wait until this request is completed, and then again go back to this. So it will do this as many times as possible within the allocated time frame. Now, if we're trying to simulate like real users, a real user will not call this address so many times in just 10 seconds, right? So what it makes sense in this case is to introduce a short pause to say, okay, after you have called this address, just, slow down for a second. Slow down. So what we're going to do in this case, we're going to use a function which is called sleep. So this is something that K6 provides. I'm going to go ahead and use import. And between brackets, I'm going to write here sleep. And this will be imported from K6 directly. All right, so now we have here sleep. So what we can do here inside the default function, we can simply go ahead and write here sleep. So sleep takes a number in seconds, and it will essentially wait for that given period of time. So if we say here, for example, sleep 1, what this will mean is that the virtual user will call this address, will wait for the response, and then 1 second, it will do nothing, right? So we're going to go ahead and execute the exact same script as before, 10 virtual users, duration of 10 seconds, to see what is happening in that situation. Now, as you will see here, the number of iterations has been reduced, right? So from 270 something, we are down at 70 iterations and also 70 requests. So this is what we want to see in this case. And there's also some additional metrics, like we can see that we're sending about 6.6 requests per second. Now, of course, there are many other things that we have here in this report provided by K6. So there are a few things I want you to point out. So first of all, when we are looking here at the results, what we want to see is that there are no errors, right? So sometimes if something goes wrong, we may see here an error in this part right after the K6 logo. So if there's an error, we need to understand what is going on. So let me give you an example of an error. Let's say we are doing something, let's say, wrong with our script, right? So let's say between these, I'm not gonna put a comma here. So this will be essentially invalid JavaScript. I'm gonna assume that you don't see this and you're just running your script. And then what you'll get here, this is kind of like obvious. You'll get here an error. It's gonna tell you something is wrong. Sometimes if there's something JavaScript related, you may only get like a warning or something like that. So it really depends a bit. So let's see what happens if we comment out this import sleep from here and run this once again. So in this case, you will see the script itself will start, but it will show you all these errors here and it will say you sleep is not defined. So when you see something like this, make sure you double check your script for errors like this one and always make small steps and test them out with a small number of users and a very short duration, just to ensure that your script is working as expected. Now, apart from this, there can also be some connection related errors. So for example, let's say we got this address here wrong and maybe it doesn't exist. So it means instead of k6.io, maybe it's iox. So what we can do is, again, try the same script. It will start, but then we're going to get these warnings here telling us, hey, the request has failed, there's no such host, and things like that. Now, in this case, all the errors that you've seen or all the warnings that you have seen here are very obvious, but sometimes there's just one line, it's telling you something. So it's super important that you don't miss things like that and right from the beginning, when something like this appears, a warning or an error, don't simply ignore it and hope that it will go away. Just make sure that you understand what is going on there and try to figure out which state of your script worked last time without that error and what is happening right now for your script not to work anymore as expected. Okay, that's it for this lecture.